Welcome, listeners, to Shadows of the Past, where the darkest corners of human nature are laid bare. Tonight, we bring you 5 true crime stories so chilling they linger like a cold breath on the back of your neck. These are tales of betrayal, deception, and unspeakable acts, each one unraveling the fragile threads of trust and love. As the rain falls and the world fades to black, let these stories carry you into the shadow. Settle in, dim the lights, and let the mysteries unfold. But be warned, the truth is often more unsettling than fiction. Our journey begins in the vibrant streets of Taipei, where a young woman's disappearance sparks a hunt for answers that will lead to a horrifying truth. Part 1. The Vanishing of Gaowu, Taipei, Taiwan, 2018. The morning of June 1, 2018 dawned humid and heavy in New Taipei, Taiwan. The city pulsed with its familiar rhythm. Street vendors hawked steaming buns, scooters zipped through narrow alleys, and the sun bore down with an unrelenting intensity. In the Xian district, a modest police station stood as a quiet sentinel amidst the chaos. That morning, a man in his 60s, surnamed Ga, stepped through its doors, his weathered face etched with a father's unspoken dread. His daughter, Gaowu, was missing. At 30 years old, she was a vibrant soul, a woman whose love for art, culture, and the intricate history of her homeland defined her. But since the previous afternoon, she had vanished, leaving behind a silence that screamed louder than words. Gawu's last contact with her family was a fleeting text sent to her younger sister at 3:00 p.m. on May 31. "It's too hot," she wrote, her words casual, almost mundane. "I'm going out to find a cooler place." That was it. No follow-up, no phone call, no trace of her since. To the officers at the Xi'an station, this wasn't immediately cause for alarm. Adults sometimes drifted out of touch for a day, their phones forgotten or batteries drained. Gaowu was no child. She didn't need constant watching. Perhaps she was at a friend's house, lost in conversation, or had simply wandered off to escape the stifling heat. But Gao, his hands trembling as he clutched a photo of his daughter, wasn't convinced. His insistence, the raw edge of panic in his voice, pushed the police to open a preliminary investigation. They began with her phone, tracing its last activity. A text from Gaowu to her friend revealed her plan to visit the Han Creative Park, a sprawling cultural hub in the heart of Taipei. Han was a place of endless allure. Its grounds teemed with art seminars, open-air picnics, and vibrant crowds of young creatives. It was the kind of place Gaowu would gravitate toward, a sanctuary for her restless artistic soul. She'd been there before, sketching in quiet corners or soaking in the energy of like-minded dreamers. Her father clung to this clue like a lifeline, hoping she'd simply lost track of time, caught up in the park's magnetic pull. The police, too, held on to a flicker of optimism. Maybe Gaowu was still there, her phone dead, her mind adrift in a world of colors and ideas. But as the hours stretched into days, optimism curdled into dread. By June 3rd, Gaowu hadn't returned. Her family, now frantic, descended on the Taipei police station, which oversaw Han's jurisdiction. Their voices rose in a chorus of fear and frustration demanding action. 72 hours was too long for a woman like Gaowu to stay silent. She was reliable, tethered to her routines, her phone an extension of her being. The case escalated from a missing person report to a full-blown investigation. The police mobilized 2 teams, one to scour Han's sprawling grounds, the other to comb through hours of surveillance footage, searching for any glimpse of Gaowu's familiar figure. Early leads offered a fragile thread of hope. A convenience store owner near Han's entrance recalled Gaowu stopping by on May 31. She'd withdrawn $32.00 from an ATM, her expression calm, even cheerful, as she mentioned the money was for tuition for a course. The owner's memory was vivid. Gaowu's warm smile, her casual chat about the heat. Other parkgoers corroborated the sighting, recalling a young woman matching her description weaving through the crowds. Her steps light, her presence unremarkable. A few even placed her at Han's Central Pavilion, a hub for art seminars and cultural events. But the trail ended there. No one at the seminars recognized her name or face. No witnesses saw her leave, and most chillingly, the park's extensive network of surveillance cameras covering every major entrance and exit showed nothing. No Gaowu departing, no Gaowu at all. It was as if she'd stepped into Han and dissolved into the humid air. The police now faced two haunting possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Either Gao was still somewhere within Han's vast expanse, hidden or trapped in one of its countless corners, or someone had smuggled her out, evading every camera with surgical precision. Both scenarios were daunting. Han Creative Park was a labyrinth, a former industrial site reborn as a cultural haven, its grounds dotted with art studios, event spaces, and secluded pathways. Searching every inch was like chasing a ghost through a maze. And bypassing the cameras? That required cunning, meticulous planning, or an intimate knowledge of the park's blind spots. The implications were chilling. If Gao had been taken, her abductor was no amateur. Investigators shifted their focus to Gao's personal life, hoping to unearth a motive or a connection that could explain her disappearance. Gao was a complex figure, her life a tapestry of light and shadow. She was well educated, with a degree in cultural studies and deeply passionate about Taiwan's indigenous heritage. Her kindness was legendary. She'd once spearheaded a fundraising campaign for victims of the 2016 Kaohsiung, earning her community's admiration, but her social media told a different story, one of quiet struggles and unspoken pain. Posts on Facebook revealed a strange relationship with her father, who had once berated her harshly for losing her wallet in college, an incident that left scars. After graduating, Gao had faced relentless challenges in Taipei's cutthroat job market. Rejections piled up, and at one workplace she endured bullying that crushed her confidence. "This city feels like a monster," she wrote in a late-night post. "Every morning I wake up wanting to cry, a voice inside screaming to run away." Could Gao have fled, overwhelmed by the weight of her life? The idea wasn't far-fetched. Her posts hinted at moments of despair, of feeling suffocated by Taipei's relentless pace. Perhaps she'd sought escape, leaving her phone behind to sever ties with a world that felt too heavy. But her younger sister, her closest confidant, dismissed the theory with fierce conviction. Gao was stable now, she insisted. She'd found a job at a Japanese fashion store, a role that suited her creative spirit. Her days were simple: work, home, occasional outings to Honolulu Cafe. She wouldn't just leave, her sister said, her voice breaking, and she'd never go anywhere without her phone. It was her lifeline. The police agreed. Gao's modest income ruled out robbery as a motive. She carried little worth stealing. She had no boyfriend, no romantic entanglements that might suggest a crime of passion. Her reclusive nature made revenge unlikely. She had no enemies, no grudges that anyone could recall. That left one grim hypothesis: a random homicide, the kind of crime that chills even the most seasoned investigators to the core. Han's unique status as the Prairie Autonomous Zone complicated the search. The park operated with minimal government oversight, a haven for artists and free spirits. Its autonomy made it a magnet for creativity, but also a challenge for law enforcement. Searching every studio, every shadowed corner, was a logistical nightmare. The police deployed additional officers combing through Han's grounds with methodical precision, but the task felt Sisyphean. Heavy rains on June 2 had likely washed away any physical evidence, footprints, fibers, or blood. Time was slipping away, and with it, any hope of finding Gao alive. Desperate for a breakthrough, Gao's family turned to Chen Xingu, a renowned search expert whose reputation preceded him. Chen arrived with Lingi Ling, a search dog nicknamed Star Dog for its uncanny ability to track scents across impossible distances. Lingi had found missing hikers in Taiwan's mountains and disaster victims buried under rubble. If anyone could find Gao, it was this duo. The family pinned their hopes on Lingi's nose, praying it could succeed where human efforts had failed. Chen warned them the rain might have erased Gao's scent, but he agreed to try, his quiet determination a balm to their frayed nerves. For 5 grueling hours, Chen and Lingi scoured Han's grounds. The dog moved with purpose, sniffing pathways, benches, and grassy patches, but found nothing. The family trailed behind, their faces tight with anticipation. Then, in a secluded corner of the park, Lingi's demeanor changed. The dog grew frantic, its tail rigid, its bark sharp and insistent. It raced toward a small wooden house tucked away from the main paths, a structure called Yedi Chang. Lingi clawed at the door, then circled a bed inside, clinging to it as if Gao's scent was woven into the very fabric of the sheets. The police, alerted by Chen, descended on the house, their pulses quickening. This was no random find. Lingi's reaction was too intense, too specific. The house belonged to Chin Bachin, a man who presented himself as an indigenous Sadic tribesman and archery instructor. Chin was in his late 30s with a weathered face and a disarming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. When questioned, he was calm, almost eerily so, claiming he'd never heard of Gawu. He'd been at Yedichang all day on May 31, he said, teaching archery to a group of students. His students backed his story, confirming he'd been there jovial and focused. But something about Chin's demeanor, the way his hands fidgeted, the slight tremor in his voice, set the officers on edge. They pressed harder, asking about Gawu's visit to Han, her interest in indigenous culture. Chin's answers grew vague, his eyes darting to the door as if plotting an escape. The police dug into Chin's story and cracks began to form. A search of Gawu's phone records revealed a Facebook message she'd sent to Chin on May 19th, arranging to meet for an interview about Sedic traditions and an archery lesson. The art seminar Gawu mentioned was likely this meeting, the $32.00 she withdrew the fee for Chin's lesson. Chin's claim of ignorance was a lie. He and Gawu had corresponded, their meeting planned for the very day she vanished. The police uncovered another damning detail on June 2. Gawu's sister sent a group message from Gawu's phone. A desperate plea for her to come home. Chin called back almost immediately, his voice laced with panic. "Where have you gone?" he said. "Your sister's looking for you." Why would a man who claimed to be a stranger react to a mistaken message with such urgency? Why call back at all? Chin's background only deepened the suspicion. He wasn't indigenous, as he claimed, but a former cadet at Taiwan's Air Force Academy who dropped out and drifted into a nomadic life. He'd crafted his tribal persona to attract clients, offering archery lessons and cultural talks at home. His personal life was a tangle of deceit. He was married with children but unfaithful, leaving a trail of broken relationships. One woman accused him of abandoning her after she became pregnant, a claim he dismissed with cold indifference. The police began to see Chin not as a quirky artist, but as a predator hiding behind a carefully curated mask. They returned to Yedichang with Gawu's sister in tow, hoping to jog her memory or uncover more evidence. Inside the house, her eyes locked onto a familiar object, Gawu's laptop, sitting on a table, its distinctive sticker unmistakable. Chin's composure shattered. He stammered, claiming he'd found it in the park and meant to turn it in, but the lie was flimsy, and the police weren't buying it. When they moved to detain him for questioning, Chin lashed out, biting an officer's arm in a desperate bid to flee. The outburst gave them grounds to hold him, and they hauled him to the station, his calm facade now a distant memory. At the station, Chin stonewalled, his answers curt and evasive. He denied knowing Gawu, denied harming her, denied everything. But the evidence was mounting. Gawu's laptop, Lingi's reaction, the Facebook messages, the panicked phone call. The police tightened the screws. Confronting him with the inconsistencies in his story, Chin's resolve held for hours. His eyes fixed on the floor, his lips pressed into a thin line. But the weight of the truth was too heavy, and he couldn't outrun it. Meanwhile, Gawu's family and a family friend, Su Win, tracked Chin down after his initial release on a technicality. They found him at Yedichang packing a bag, preparing to flee with a woman named Luo. Su, a devout Buddhist, confronted him with a fire born of grief and fury. "Tell the truth," she demanded, her voice trembling with conviction, "or face the Bodhisattva's judgment in this life and the next." The words struck Chin like a physical blow. His shoulders slumped, his defiance crumbling. In a low, broken voice, he began to confess, each word a dagger to the hearts of those listening. Chin had lured Gawu to Yedichang on May 31 under the pretense of a cultural dinner, a chance to discuss Sedic traditions over food and drink. He'd seen her post about indigenous culture, sensed her curiosity, and used it to draw her in. At the house, he plied her with alcohol, pouring glass after glass until she was disoriented, her defenses lowered. When she passed out, Chin's true intentions surfaced. He assaulted her, believing she'd never remember or resist. But at 4 a.m., Gawu Pagunogamu woke, her mind clearing just enough to realize the horror of her situation. She fought back, clawing at him, screaming for help. In a panic, Chin grabbed her by the throat, his hands tightening until her struggles ceased. Gawu was dead, her life snuffed out in a moment of cowardice and rage. For 3 days, Chin lived with her body in Yedichang, paralyzed by fear and indecision. The house, once a stage for his fabricated persona, became a tomb. He couldn't face what he'd done, but he couldn't stay with the evidence of his crime. On June 3, as the police began their search, he made a gruesome decision. He dismembered Gao's body, his hands shaking as he worked, his mind numb to the horror. He packed her remains into 7 plastic bags, each one a testament to his desperation. Under cover of night, he rode his motorcycle to Yangmingshan, a volcanic region north of Taipei, and dumped the bags into sulfuric springs, believing the acidic waters would erase his sin. Some parts dissolved. Others were later found as preserved tissue in his home, a macabre reminder of his failure to cover his tracks. The confession stunned the police, even those hardened by years of grisly cases. Chin's matter-of-fact delivery, his lack of remorse, was chilling. He spoke of Gao as if she were an inconvenience, a problem to be solved. But questions lingered, gnawing at the edges of the investigation. Chin seemed confused about the locations of some body parts, his answers vague and disjointed. Transporting 220 pounds of remains on a motorcycle alone stretched credulity. Could he have had help? The police suspected accomplices, perhaps Luo or another associate, but no evidence surfaced to confirm it. Chin's solitary guilt was all they could prove, and it was enough. Public outrage erupted as the details leaked. Taipei's streets buzzed with anger, protests flaring outside the courthouse where Chin awaited trial. Gao's story became a rallying cry, a symbol of vulnerability in a city that prided itself on safety. Han Creative Park, once a beacon of freedom, faced scrutiny for its lax oversight. How had a predator like Chin operated unchecked in its shadows? Gao's family, shattered by grief, demanded justice, their voices amplified by a community in mourning. In 2019, Chin Bakin was sentenced to death, a rare verdict in Taiwan's judicial system. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension as the judge delivered the ruling. Gao's sister wept silently, clutching a photo of her sister while her father stared blankly, as if the weight of loss had hollowed him out. But in 2020, the Supreme Court reduced Chin's sentence to life imprisonment, citing his potential for rehabilitation, a decision that sparked fresh outrage. Gao's family, denied financial compensation, sued the Taipei Urban Development Department, arguing that Han's mismanagement had enabled Chin's crimes. The lawsuit failed, leaving them with nothing but memories and unanswered questions. Gao's story is a haunting reminder that evil can wear a familiar face, lurking in the places we feel safest. Her love for art, her trust in others, became the bait that ensnared her. As the rain falls, carrying her memory into the night, we leave Taipei behind, our minds heavy with the weight of our loss. But the shadows have more secrets to share, and our next stop is Inner Mongolia, where a businessman's death unveils a web of lies woven by those closest to him. Part 2, The Betrayal of Zhao Shuang, Inner Mongolia, China, 2013. The night of June 3rd, 2013 was heavy with the hum of industry in Buto, Inner Mongolia. The city, a sprawling hub of steel factories and coal mines, pulsed with the relentless rhythm of progress. Smoke curled into the sky, blending with the stars, while the streets below buzzed with workers ending their shifts. In the heart of this gritty landscape, Bauer No. 3 Hospital stood as a beacon of hope amidst the grime. At 11:47 p.m., the emergency line rang, shattering the quiet of the night shift. A woman's voice, trembling with panic, pleaded for help. Her husband, Xiao Zhuang, had suffered a heart attack and was fading fast. The address was an aging apartment block on Youth Road, just a mile from the hospital. Within 5 minutes, an ambulance screeched to a halt outside the building, its sirens slicing through the night. Paramedics raced up the narrow, dimly lit stairs, their equipment clattering, but they were too late. Zhao Zhuang, a 53-year-old iron ore tycoon whose wealth had shaped Buto's economy, was dead. Dr. Jiang Xia, a young physician tasked with signing the death certificate, entered the apartment with a heavy heart. The room was small, its walls stained with age, the air thick with the scent of incense. Xiao's body lay on a worn couch, dressed in crisp funeral clothes, his face pale and still. His wife, Sun Xia, stood nearby, her eyes red from crying, her hands wringing a damp tissue. She repeated her story in a trembling voice. Zhao had collapsed suddenly, blood streaming from his nose, his heart giving out before she could act. But as Dr. Jiang lifted Zhao's shirt to examine him, she froze. His torso was a canvas of violence. Dark, angry bruises spread across his chest and abdomen, the marks of blunt force. Not a heart attack. The injuries were fresh, their edges sharp, suggesting a brutal assault. Sun's story unraveled in that moment. When pressed about the bruises, her answers grew vague, her sobs drowning out any coherence. Dr. Jiang's instinct screamed foul play. She stepped outside and called the Kundan District Police, her voice steady but urgent. Within the hour, the major crime unit arrived at the apartment, their boots echoing in the narrow hallway. The scene was surreal. Xiao's body lay in state, surrounded by 3 funeral home workers who had arrived with unsettling speed, less than an hour after the ambulance left. Why the rush to cremate? What were they hiding? The police halted the process, sending Xiao's body to the morgue for an autopsy. They turned their attention to the 3 people present, Sun Ji, Zhao's wife, and a young couple, Luan Zhan, known as Lu, and Kue Yen. All 3 were visibly shaken, their faces pale, their eyes darting to the floor. The officers separated them, sensing lies beneath their grief. Sun's account was shaky from the start. She claimed Xiao had been drinking heavily that evening, a habit she said had worsened in recent months. He'd stumbled on the stairs, she said, collapsing in a heap, blood pouring from his nose as his heart failed. But her story lacked detail. When asked about his condition before the fall, she faltered, her words dissolving into tears. Lu and Kuei were equally evasive. Kuei, a slight woman in her 20s, wept hysterically, her sobs louder than Sun's, but she refused to clarify her connection to Xiao. Lu, a wiry man with a nervous tic, said little, his jaw clenched as if holding back a flood. The police took them to the station, their instincts screaming that this was no accident. The autopsy report, delivered the next morning, shattered Sun's narrative. Xiao hadn't died of a heart attack. His death was caused by multiple broken ribs, their jagged edges piercing his lungs, leading to catastrophic internal bleeding. Ligature marks circled his wrists, suggesting he'd been restrained. Bruises on his arms and legs pointing to a prolonged beating, likely with a blunt object like a stick or hammer. The injuries spanned several days, indicating a slow, deliberate assault. This was no sudden collapse, it was murder. Cold and calculated. Faced with the autopsy, the police returned to the trio, their questions sharper now. Lu cracked first, his resolve crumbling under the weight of evidence. In a halting voice, he confessed to beating Xiao with a plastic pipe, claiming he'd acted in a rage. He said he'd caught Xiao assaulting Kue, his girlfriend, in the apartment on June 1. Kue, he explained, was an insurance agent who'd met Xiao through work. Xiao, a wealthy client, had made lecherous advances, pressuring her for months. On June 1, Lu said Xiao got Kue drunk and attacked her, pinning her down as she screamed. Lu, arriving just in time, lost control, striking Xiao to stop him. He insisted he hadn't meant to kill, only to protect Kue. His story was raw, emotional, and seemingly plausible, but the police weren't convinced. To bolster their account, Lu and Kue produced evidence, a handwritten confession signed by Zhao admitting to the assault, and a voice recording of him acknowledging his actions. The confession was scrawled in shaky handwriting, the recording distorted but clear enough to hear Zhao's voice, strained and defeated. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have touched her." But the evidence raised more questions than it answered. Why would Zhao confess so readily, knowing it could ruin him? Why record it at all? The police suspected coercion. Perhaps Zhao had been forced to speak, his words extracted under duress. Sun's lie about the heart attack only deepened the mystery. Why cover up a death she claimed was natural? What was her role in this? The investigators dug into Sun's past, seeking a motive. A visit to her mother in a nearby village revealed a marriage steeped in misery. Xiao, 51 when he married 26-year-old Sun in 2010, had seemed a wealthy tycoon with a sprawling empire, but the facade crumbled quickly. Xiao was abusive, treating Sun like a servant, berating her for minor mistakes, and flaunting his affairs with younger women. Sun endured his cruelty for years, her spirit eroded by his violence. In 2012, after a particularly brutal confrontation, she left him, seeking a divorce but refusing to disclose why. Her mother described a woman broken by shame, hiding the truth to protect her family's honor. Sun's resentment was palpable. A motive for murder, perhaps, but how did Lu and Kue fit in? The police turned to the apartment, searching for clues. The space was cramped, its furniture worn, its walls pilling from years of neglect. A thorough sweep revealed a chilling discovery: a hidden camera embedded in a wall clock. its lens trained on the living room. The camera had recorded hours of footage, including intimate moments between Xiao and Kui. The videos showed Zhao's advances, Kui's hesitant compliance, and moments of apparent coercion. At first, the footage seemed to confirm Lu's story. Xiao was the aggressor, Kui the victim. But a nagging detail stood out. The camera was in Kui's rented apartment, not Xiao's home. Why install it there? Who was it meant to catch? Under relentless questioning, Lu's story began to fray. His eyes darted to Kui, seeking reassurance, but she remained silent, her face a mask of fear. Finally, he broke, his voice barely a whisper. The assault was a lie, he admitted. A carefully staged extortion gone horribly wrong. Kui wasn't an insurance agent, but a massage parlor worker hired to play a role. The camera wasn't for protection. It was for blackmail. The mastermind wasn't Lu or Kui, it was Sun. The truth unraveled like a dark tapestry. Sun, consumed by hatred for Zhao, had orchestrated a plan to destroy him. She'd hired Lu, her secret lover, to execute it, exploiting his loyalty and desperation for cash. Kui was the bait, paid to seduce Zhao and lure him to the apartment on June 1, 2013. The camera was installed to capture compromising footage. Material Sun planned to use to extort 1 million yuan from Zhao. She knew his wealth was vast, his reputation fragile. A scandal would ruin him, forcing him to pay or face public shame. On the night of June 1, Kui played her part, enticing Xiao to the apartment. When he took the bait, Lu and Sun burst in, confronting him with the footage and demanding payment. But Zhao's response threw them off. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound, and revealed a devastating truth. His fortune was gone. He'd transferred his assets to his first wife years ago, leaving him with little but debts. The empire Sun believed she'd tap into was a mirage. Enraged by his defiance, Sun's plan spiraled into violence. She and Lu tied Xiao to a chair, their anger boiling over. For 40 hours, they beat him, using a plastic pipe, a hammer, and their fists. They denied him food and water, their cruelty fueled by betrayal and greed. Zhao's pleas grew weaker, his body failing under the relentless assault. On June 3, his heart stopped, his ribs shattered, his spirit broken. Sun's attempt to pass it off as a heart attack was a desperate bid to cover their tracks. She dressed Zhao in funeral clothes, called the funeral home, and rehearsed her story. But the camera, meant to be their weapon, became their undoing. The footage captured not just Zhao's interactions with Kui, but snippets of the violence, blurred images of Lu striking Zhao, Sun's voice in the background, cold and commanding. The police found the camera during a second search, its memory card a silent witness to the crime. The investigation peeled back layers of deception, revealing the trio's tangled motives. Sun's hatred for Zio was rooted in years of abuse, but her greed was equally potent. She dreamed of a divorce settlement that would free her from poverty, only to learn Zio had nothing left. Lu, a drifter with a criminal past, saw the extortion as a ticket to a better life, his loyalty to Sun blinding him to the consequences. Kui, the weakest link, was a pawn, drawn in by promises of money and pressured by Lu's dominance. Each played a role, but Sun was the architect, her resentment the spark that ignited the tragedy. The police arrested Sun, Lu, and Kui on charges of intentional homicide and extortion. At the Kundin district station, their interrogations were a study in contrasts. Sun remained defiant, her tears replaced by a steely resolve, insisting she'd only meant to scare Zhao. Lu, racked with guilt, confessed fully, his voice breaking as he described the moment Xiao's eyes went dark. Kui, barely coherent, wept through her statement, claiming she'd been coherent by Lu and Sun. The evidence was overwhelming. The autopsy, the camera footage, the ligature marks, the bruises, there was no escaping the truth. The trial, held in Budo's central courthouse, was a media circus. Reporters packed the galleries, their notebooks filling with details of the sordid plot. The public was divided. Some saw Sun as a battered wife driven to desperation, others as a cold-blooded manipulator. Lu's remorse earned him a sliver of sympathy. But Kui's role as a seductress drew scorn. Prosecution laid out the case with chilling precision, playing the camera footage for the jury. Xiao's final moments a haunting testament to his suffering. The defense argued coercion and diminished responsibility, but the evidence was ironclad. In December 2013, the verdicts came down. Sun-Kyu was convicted of murder and extortion, sentenced to life without parole, her dreams of wealth replaced by a concrete cell. Liu, deemed the primary assailant, received the same, his remorse unable to undo his actions. Ku, convicted as an accomplice, was given 15 years, her youth and coercion mitigating her sentence. The courtroom was silent as the judge spoke, the weight of justice settling over the room like a shroud. The case sent ripples through Buto, a city unaccustomed to such intimate betrayal. Xiao Shuang, once a titan of industry, was reduced to a cautionary tale, his wealth unable to shield him from those he trusted most. Sun's plot, born of resentment and greed, had backfired spectacularly, her own trap ensnaring her. The apartment on Youth Road became a local legend, its walls whispered to hold the echoes of Xiao's final pleas. Residents avoided it, claiming the air felt heavy, the shadows too dark. As the rain falls carrying the echoes of Buto's tragedy, we leave Inner Mongolia behind. The shadows beckon us onward to a quiet villa in France, where a locked basement holds a secret that defies explanation. Part 3. The Enigma of Gone Marshall, Mugan, France, 1991. In the summer of 1991, the hillside village of Mugan, France, was a picture of tranquility. Nestled among rolling vineyards and sun-dappled olive groves, its cobblestone streets wound past quaint villas and charming bistros. At the edge of the village stood a grand estate, its whitewashed walls and red-tiled roof a testament to wealth and solitude. This was the home of Gone Marshall, a 65-year-old widow whose life was a tapestry of quiet elegance. A retired heiress, Gone filled her days with tea parties, charity luncheons, and long walks through her meticulously tended gardens. But on June 24, 1991, a frantic phone call to the Mugan police shattered the village's idyllic calm. Erica, Gone's closest friend, was on the line, her voice trembling with fear. Gone was missing, her villa eerily silent, her absence a gaping wound in the fabric of their small community. Erica's call came at 10:17 a.m., her words tumbling out in a rush. She'd spoken to Gone the previous day, June 23, at 11:48 a.m., arranging a lunch for today. Gone had sounded cheerful, her voice warm with anticipation. But when Erica arrived at the villa, no one answered the bell. The gate was locked, the windows dark. She'd called Gone's phone repeatedly, each unanswered ring tightening the knot in her chest. Alarmed, Erica contacted two other friends, Colette and Pascal, who joined her at the villa. Colette, a sprightly woman in her 60s, recalled visiting Gone on June 22 to invite her to a lunch party. Gone had declined, citing a prior engagement, but promised to meet soon. When Colette returned the next day, the villa was empty, its silence unnatural. Pascal, a security consultant and Gone's longtime friend, brought his expertise to the scene. Together, the trio climbed the gate, their hearts pounding as they peered through windows, hoping for a sign of life. Inside, the villa was a snapshot of Gone's routine, frozen in time. A breakfast tray sat in the kitchen, its croissant untouched, a cup of tea cold and congealed. In the bedroom, Gone's glasses rested on an open newspaper, her bed unmade, as if she'd risen in a hurry. Her purse, keys, and phone were all present, ruling out a planned departure. The friends searched every room, their calls for Gone echoing unanswered. The police summoned by Erica's call arrived with a mix of skepticism and concern. Missing person cases often resolved quickly. An elderly woman might have wandered off or visited a neighbor unannounced, but Gone's wealth and prominence demanded attention, and the officers began a methodical sweep of the property. The main house yielded no clues, its opulent rooms pristine, its silence oppressive. The search extended to the guest house, a separate structure with a basement used for storage and wine. At the basement's entrance, a heavy metal door stopped them cold. It was locked from the inside, a folding bed, metal pipe, and wooden plank wedged against it, forming an impenetrable barrier. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. This was no ordinary lockout. With crowbars and brute force, they pried the door open, revealing a dark, narrow hallway leading to a wine cellar and boiler room. The air was thick with the coppery scent of blood. At the end of the hallway, face down in a pool of crimson, lay Gone Marshall. The scene was a nightmare etched in shadow. Gone's body was clad in a blood-stained bathrobe, one slipper missing, her arms raised as if reaching for salvation. Blood matted her hair, pooling beneath her, staining the concrete floor. Bruises marred her hands, her fingers twisted at unnatural angles, evidence of a desperate struggle. But the true horror lay on the wine cellar door. Scrawled in blood, the words, Omar Matu, French for Omar killed me. A fainter inscription on the boiler room door echoed the accusation, its letters smudged but legible. The police froze, the message a chilling indictment. Omar, Ghani's Moroccan gardener, was now their prime suspect. Omar Redad, 29, was arrested the next day in Talon, a nearby town, during Eid al-Adha celebrations. He was a quiet man, his dark eyes wide with shock as officers cuffed him in front of his family. Omar had worked for Ghan for 3 years, tending her gardens with care, his gentle demeanor earning her trust. He also worked for Pascal, who praised his honesty and work ethic. Ghani treated Omar's children like her own, gifting them toys and sweets. When questioned, Omar was adamant he knew nothing of Ghani's death. His limited French and inability to read or write complex sentences made it unlikely he'd penned the bloody messages, yet the accusation was undeniable, written in Ghani's final moments, or so it seemed. The investigation plunged into a labyrinth of contradictions. Forensic analysis painted a grim picture. Gain had been struck over 5 times with a blunt object, her skull fractured, her chest and abdomen pierced by 10 sharp wounds, likely from scissors. Her fingers were broken, her arms scratched in dirt streaks suggesting she'd been dragged. A small neck wound, non-fatal, hinted at a struggle gone awry. The cause of death was severe blood loss, her life ebbing away between 12:00 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. on June 23. DNA tests confirmed the blood in the basement was Ghan's, but 1991's technological limits detected no other traces. The killer, it seemed, was meticulous or lucky. The locked basement was the case's greatest enigma. The metal door, barred from within, formed a sealed room, accessible only by that entrance. How had the killer escaped? Why leave a message implicating Omar? The police theorized Gain wrote it herself, naming her attacker in her final moments. But doubts crept in. Could a gravely injured woman in excruciating pain write such clear messages? One officer argued it was impossible. The writing was too neat, the effort too great for a dying 65-year-old. Yet Gain's personal documents revealed frequent grammatical errors, mirroring those in the messages, suggesting she might have written them after all. Handwriting analysis offered conflicting answers. A police expert compared the basement messages to Gain's letters, concluding they were hers. The clearer line was written while kneeling, the fainter while lying down, her strength fading. But other experts disagreed, noting differences in letter endings. Gain's were long and flourish-filled, the messages short and abrupt. The debate raged, leaving the writing's authorship unresolved. A puzzle within a puzzle. A puzzle up at the... Omar's alibi was scrutinized with relentless precision. He claimed he'd worked at Pascal's home on June 23rd, from morning until evening, with a lunch break at his own home in Lacan Eyes. At 12:05 p.m., he said he stopped at a Mugan bakery to buy bread, then met a casino owner near his doorstep at 12:15 p.m. After lunch, he returned to Pascal's by 1:30 p.m., later calling his wife from a phone booth to confirm his travel plans for Eid, but the bakery staff denied seeing him. The casino owner couldn't recall the encounter, and his phone call at 12:51 p.m. misaligned with his timeline, leaving a window for the crime. Pascal confirmed Omar's presence at work, but the noon to 1:30 p.m. gap was troubling. Physical evidence tightened the noose. Dust on Omar's pants matched the basement's, contradicting his claim of not being there recently. Plaster and fiberglass traces on his clothing raised suspicions, though their chemical composition didn't perfectly match the basement. A pair of scissors found at the scene bore animal DNA, broad enough to include human, but inconclusive. Omar's shoes, worn smooth, held no dust, a detail that could exonerate or implicate him. His financial records added fuel. Over 2 years, he'd withdrawn 80,000 francs, a fortune for a gardener. He claimed it was for a friend's business, a story, verified, but frequent salary advances from Ghani and Pascal suggested desperation. Had Ghani refused a request, sparky. Public opinion split like a fault line. Omar's supporters, rallied by his family and Pascal, saw him as a scapegoat targeted for his Moroccan heritage. Media frenzy dubbed it France's O.J. Simpson case, with accusations of racial bias fueling protests. Books like Omar, The Making of a Criminal, argued he was framed possibly by Ghane's influential brother-in-law, a marble industry magnate. Yet others saw guilt in Omar's inconsistencies, his gambling habit, his vague alibi, the dust on his pants. Alternative theories emerged. A reporter, Levy, suggested the killer escaped through a wine cellar window installed by Ghan in 1990 for ventilation, as Ghan's gardener, Omar, knew the basement's layout, making him a plausible suspect. But no evidence confirmed the window's use. Other suspects, Omar's brother, a chef, a Frenchman, and a local thief named Gilbert, were cleared by solid alibi. Now, 2001 claim tied Gain to the Solar Temple cult, alleging her murder was a financial dispute, but the source, a con artist named Guy, was discredited. Omar's ordeal was grueling. In prison for months, he staged hunger strikes and set his blanket ablaze, his desperation palpable. Pascal's family vouched for him, revealing an anonymous call, accusing Omar of writing the message in blood, the claim she'd forgotten until later, casting doubt on its truth. In 1994, Omar was convicted of murder, sentenced to 18 years. The verdict sparked outrage, with supporters demanding a retrial. In 1996, a diplomatic deal between Morocco's King Hassan II and French President Jacques Chirac reduced his sentence to 4 years and 8 months. Omar walked free, vowing to clear his name. In 2000, a reopened investigation found the messages weren't Ghan's, and DNA from 2 unidentified men was detected, but it wasn't enough to overturn the conviction. Omar's book, Poor Koa, Why, detailed his ordeal, becoming a bestseller. To this day, he searches for the truth, though some believe he holds the answers. The locked basement remains a haunting riddle, its secrets buried with Ghan. As the rain falls, carrying Ghan's mystery into the night, we leave friends behind. The shadows call us to South Korea, where a mother's love meets a son's betrayal. Part 4, The Murder of Miss Kang in Young, South Korea, 2008. The city of Ongyang, South Korea, pulsed with life on the night of June 9, 2008. Nestled in Gyeonggi Province, its streets buzzed with the glow of karaoke bars, the chatter of late-night diners, and the hum of taxis weaving through the urban sprawl. In a quiet corner of the city, a second-floor apartment stood unassuming, its windows dimly lit, curtains swaying in the summer breeze. Inside, a scene of unimaginable horror awaited. Miss Kang, a 42-year-old karaoke hostess, lay dead, her body a canvas of violence, her life extinguished in a frenzy of rage. The discovery of her murder would unravel a story so heartbreaking it would shake Anyang to its core, exposing the darkest depths of human greed and betrayal. The alarm was raised by Miss Kim, Kang's close friend and colleague. For 2 days, Kang had been silent, a stark contrast to her diligent nature. Kang was a woman who worked tirelessly, her days filled with long shifts to provide for her son, her only family. Kim's calls and texts went unanswered, each unanswered ring tightening the knot in her stomach. By midnight on June 9, after her own shift ended, Kim could wait no longer. She took a taxi to Kang's apartment, her heart pounding with a premonition she couldn't shake. As she approached, a faint light filtered through the curtains, an odd detail. King never slept with lights on. Kim rang the doorbell, her voice calling out into the night, but only silence answered. Hesitant, she tried the door. To her shock, it was unlocked, swinging open with a soft creak. The sight that greeted her was a nightmare. Kang lay face down in the living room, her body surrounded by a pool of blood, her skin already turning a sickly purple. The air was thick with the metallic tang of death, the room a chaotic tableau of violence. Kim's screams shattered the silence, drawing neighbors to their windows, their faces pale with dread. She stumbled to the phone, dialing the Anyang police, her voice breaking as she begged for help. Within minutes, sirens pierced the night, and officers descended on the apartment, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The crime scene was brutal, even for seasoned investigators. Kang's body bore the marks of a savage attack, 39 stab wounds in total, each one a testament to the killer's fury. 2 wounds marred her face, one so forceful it broke her lower 4th tooth. 2 more pierced her neck, narrowly missing vital arteries. The most horrific damage was to her chest and abdomen, where 28 wounds formed a gruesome constellation, and her thighs and calves bore 39 additional slashes as if the killer sought to erase her very existence. The sheer number of wounds suggested a personal vendetta, a rage so consuming it defied reason. The strength required pointed to a physically powerful assailant, likely male capable of overpowering Kang's desperate struggle. Investigators cataloged the scene with meticulous care. An open bedroom window caught their attention, its frame slightly askew, suggesting the killer's entry point. On the floor near the bed, a trail of bloody shoe prints, size 8 US, marked a path across the mattress and into the living room. Tests confirmed the blood was Kang's, the prints forming a winding route through the bedroom before straightening toward the front door. The apartment's layout was clear. The front door opened into the living room, with the bedroom in the upper left corner. From the window and blood patterns, police reconstructed the sequence. The killer had climbed through the window, surprised Kang in her bed, and chased her to the living room, where she met her end. The perpetrator then fled through the front door, leaving a trail of blood and questions. At first glance, the scene suggested a robbery gone wrong. Drawers in the bedroom were pulled out, their contents scattered, and cash was missing from Kang's wallet. But closer inspection revealed inconsistencies. The ransacking was superficial. Clothes remained neatly folded in the closet, with only a few items carelessly tossed on the floor. Valuable items like savings books, additional cash in a drawer, and Kang's jewelry were untouched, still adorning her body. The killer's path was deliberate, ignoring living room cabinets, focusing solely on Kang. This was no robbery, the police concluded, but a murder disguised as one. The staging clumsy and unconvincing. The 39 stab wounds spoke of rage or emotional turmoil, hinting at a deep connection between victim and killer. The investigation faced immediate hurdles. In 2008, Anyang's residential areas lacked security cameras, leaving no visual record of the killer's movements. No fingerprints or DNA, hair, blood, or skin from the perpetrator were found, a frustrating anomaly. The police turned to Kang's life, hoping to uncover a motive. Kang was a divorced mother raising her 20-year-old son, Kim Jang-jun, a college student who had recently moved out to be closer to his university and part-time job. She had lived in the apartment for years, her life a grind of day and night shifts to make ends meet. By day, she sold cross-stitch embroidery at a craft store. By night, she worked as a karaoke hostess, her warm smile masking the exhaustion of her dual roles. Interviews with neighbors and friends painted a picture of a resilient woman, beloved but burdened. Kang's marriage had ended 7 years earlier, her husband's death in a traffic accident leaving her alone with Kim. Her son was her world, the driving force behind her relentless work ethic. But one relationship stood out. Her 45-year-old boyfriend, Mr. Lee. Neighbors described their relationship as turbulent, marked by frequent, heated arguments. Lee's jealousy was notorious. He monitored Kang's work hours, checked her phone, and blocked numbers he deemed suspicious. On June 7, around 5:00 a.m., neighbors recalled hearing screams from Kang's apartment, a detail they dismissed as another of the couple's fights. When cross-referenced with forensic estimates, this matched Kang's time of death, approximately 2.5 days before her body was found. Lee became the prime suspect. His controlling behavior, coupled with the screams, pointed to a crime of passion. Police dug into his phone records, finding frequent calls to Kang that abruptly stopped days before the murder, a red flag. But another lead emerged, complicating the case. A year before her death, Kang had purchased 13 life insurance policies, their monthly premiums totaling $1,500.00, a staggering sum for her modest income. The policies promised a $250.00 payout upon her death, with Kim as the sole beneficiary. The unusual number of policies raised suspicions. Could Kim, driven by greed, have orchestrated his mother's death? The police focused on verifying Lee's and Kim's whereabouts during the murder window. Lee's alibi was solid. Security footage showed him returning home on June 6 and not leaving until the next morning. A critical detail from the crime scene further cleared him. The bloody shoe prints were size 8, while Lee wore size 9.5. Kim's alibi was less certain. He claimed he'd been at his rented apartment 2 miles away, hosting a drinking party with 3 friends from the evening of June 6 to the afternoon of June 7. His friends corroborated his story, their accounts consisting even under pressure. When asked about the insurance policies, Kim seemed genuinely shocked, insisting he knew nothing about them, but the police weren't convinced. His friend's loyalty could be a shield, their statements rehearsed. To understand Kim's potential motive, investigators delved into his past, uncovering a story of heartbreak. Kang had given birth to Kim at 22, raising him alone while her husband worked away, rarely sending money. Economic hardship and Kang's serious illness forced her to place Kim in an orphanage at age 8, a decision that haunted her. She visited when she could, but the separation left deep scars. 15 years later, with her health restored and a stable job, Kang brought King home, determined to make up for lost time. Friends described her guilt as all-consuming. She spoke often of her son's childhood struggles, her fear of failing him again, the insurance policies they believed were her way of securing his future, a safety net in case Kim's life was shaped by those orphanage years. He was quiet, studious, and fiercely independent, working part-time to ease his mother's burden. Kang, however, insisted on covering his college tuition and rent, her love expressed through sacrifice. The $250,000, 0 cents payout was tempting, but Kim's devotion to his mother seemed genuine. Could a son so cherished turn against her? The police pressed harder, re-examining the crime scene for overlooked clues. A small bloodstain near the front door handle caught their attention. Tests revealed it wasn't Kang's, but type O blood, fresh and likely from the killer, suggesting an injury during the attack. Neither Lee nor Kim had type O blood, clearing them both, but opening a new avenue of investigation. With Lee eliminated, the police scrutinized Kim's friends, sensing a crack in their unified front. All three had grown up with Kim in the same orphanage, their bond forged in shared hardship. Suspecting collusion, investigators separated them, asking probing questions about the night of June 6. One friend, under pressure, wavered. He admitted arriving late due to work, his answers growing evasive. Pressed further, he revealed a bombshell. There was a fifth person at Kim's apartment that night, a man named Cho Kyung-han, deliberately omitted from their statements. Kim had instructed them to keep Cho's presence secret, a directive that reeked of conspiracy. Cho was a ghost in the investigation. His phone turned off, his whereabouts unknown. A close friend of Kim's from the orphanage, Cho had lived with Kang and Kim briefly after turning 18. Kang had taken him in, hoping to help another child of hardship, but his unemployment strained her finances. She eventually found him a job at a restaurant with room and board, a move Cho misinterpreted as rejection. The police tracked Cho's movements, discovering he'd taken a bus to Gunsan, North Jeolla Province, the day after the murder. A tip from an orphanage contact led them to a public phone booth miles from Gunsan's downtown. On June 26, 2008, they arrested Cho, a lanky 19-year-old with haunted eyes. To their surprise, he didn't resist. Instead, he confessed immediately, his voice flat, as if unburdened a weight too heavy to carry. Cho's confession turned the case upside down. He admitted to killing Kang, but not alone. Kim Jang-jun, Kang's son, was the mastermind, driven by greed for the $250,000, 0 cents insurance payout. Cho revealed Kim knew about the policies, contradicting his earlier denials. Lie to their modest life, Kim had proposed a chilling plan. How long must we live in poverty? If we kill my mother, the insurance money will be enough for us to live comfortably. I'll share it with you if you help. Blinded by the promise of wealth, Cho agreed. His resentment toward Kang, whom he felt had cast him out, fueling his compliance. Thus, the plan was meticulous. On June 6, after their friends fell into a drunken sleep, Kim and Cho slipped out of Kim's apartment. Kim had prepared a folding ladder to access Kang's second-floor window. Knowing its sliding door was unlatched and unsecured, he climbed in, opened the front door for Cho, then returned to the car to stand guard. At 5:00 a.m., as Kang returned from work, Kim called Cho, signaling her approach. Cho hid in the bedroom, waiting for Kang to enter. When she did, he struck, his knife plunging into her face, neck, and body as she fought desperately. Kang fled to the living room, but Cho pursued, his rage unrelenting. After the killing, they staged a robbery, taking cash from her wallet while leaving valuables behind. Cho, injured during the struggle, left a type O bloodstain, later bandaging his wound at Kim's apartment. They drove to a nearby mountain before dawn, disposing of the knife, gloves, and clothes in a remote ditch. Returning to Kim's apartment, they blended back into the party, their friends none the wiser. The three became unwitting alibis, their loyalty exploited by Kim's deception. Cho's confession was corroborated by damning evidence. Kim's fingerprints on the windowsill pointing inward confirmed his entry from outside. Car rental records and a 120 IEM gas station transaction on June 7 placed Kim away from home when he claimed to be sleeping. The bloody bandage found in Kim's bathroom sealed the case, tying Cho's injury to the crime. The police arrested Kim at his apartment, his calm facade crumbling under the weight of Cho's testimony. Even faced with overwhelming evidence, he denied everything, crafting a sympathetic image online as a hard-working orphan falsely accused. But the truth was undeniable. Kang's friend, testifying at the trial, moved the courtroom to tears. She worked day and night for him, she said, her voice breaking. She told him not to worry, that she'd prepared everything so he could live well, even if she was gone. Kang's sacrifices, her grueling jobs, her guilt-driven insurance policies were repaid with betrayal. The trial revealed the stark contrast between the killers. Cho, trembling with remorse, confessed fully, his tears a stark admission of guilt. Kim, chillingly indifferent, justified his actions, claiming he hadn't told Cho to stab her that many times. When asked about seeing his mother's body while staging the scene, he replied coldly, "I wasn't thinking about anything. I just wanted to finish and leave." His callousness peaked in his final statement. "What has my mother ever done for me?" The word sparked outrage, a cruel epitaph for a mother who gave everything. On November 12, 2008, Cho and Kim were sentenced to life imprisonment. Appeals in 2009 escalated their sentences to death, upheld by the Supreme Court. In 2011, Kim ended his life in prison, followed by Cho in 2012, their deaths perhaps driven by guilt or the weight of their crime. Kang's story remains a tragic warning, her love twisted into the tool of her destruction. As the rain falls, carrying Kang's memory into the night we leave Anyang behind, the shadows beckon us to Hong Kong, where a son's resentment festers into a crime that defies comprehension. Part 5. The Murder of Glory Chow and Moon Soo, Hong Kong, 2013. Hong Kong, March 7, 2013. The city was a kaleidoscope of light and motion, its skyscrapers piercing the clouds, its streets alive with the hum of commerce and ambition. In the quiet suburb of To Kwa Wan, a modest apartment block stood as a haven for the Chow family, a tight-knit unit whose lives revolved around love and duty. Glory Chow, 65, and Moon Soo, 62, were the heart of the family, devoted parents who had raised two sons, Chio Ying and Henry Chow, with unwavering sacrifice. But on this day, a phone call to the Kowloon City police station would shatter that image, exposing a darkness that lurked within their own bloodline. The call came from Ho Ying and Henry, their voices laced with panic. Their parents were missing, gone without a trace, for 5 days. What followed would become one of Hong Kong's most shocking crimes, a tale of filial betrayal that left the city reeling. Glory and Moon were the epitome of the Chinese dream. Immigrants from Fujian, they'd arrived in Hong Kong in the 1970s, their pockets empty but their spirits unyielding. Through decades of toil, they'd built a comfortable life. Glory as a homemaker, Moon as a retired textile merchant whose shrewd investments secured their future. Their To Kwa Wan apartment was modest but filled with warmth, its walls adorned with family photos, its kitchen fragrant with Glory's cooking. Their sons, now in their 30s, were their pride. Ho Ying the elder was a steady presence, working as a clerk. Henry the younger was a dreamer, his ambitions tempered by a restless spirit. To neighbors, the Chows were unremarkable, their lives a quiet testament to hard-won stability. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered, unseen until they erupted in unimaginable violence. The brothers' call to the police was urgent but vague. They claimed Glory and Moon had planned a trip to mainland China on March 1, a spontaneous getaway to visit relatives, but 5 days had passed without contact. No calls, no texts, no sign of them. The police, accustomed to missing persons cases, began with routine checks. They visited the apartment, expecting to find signs of a hasty departure. Instead, they found an eerie stillness. The living room was tidy, the kitchen untouched, a half-finished crossword puzzle lying on the dining table. Glory's purse, Moon's wallet, and their passports were all present, untouched, ruling out travel. Their phones, still charging on the nightstand, showed no outgoing activity since March 1. The absence of travel permits mandatory for mainland China further debunked the brothers' story. Something was terribly wrong. Ho Ying and Henry were questioned separately, their accounts scrutinized for cracks. Ho Ying, 35, was soft-spoken, his eyes red from worry. He said he'd last seen his parents on February 28 when they mentioned the China trip. He'd been at work on March 1, returning home to find them gone. Henry, 32, was more animated, his words tumbling out in a rush. He claimed the family had tea at Langham Place Mall on March 1, after which Glory and Moon left for China. But his story faltered under pressure. Dates shifted, times blurred, and he couldn't recall the tea shop's name. Surveillance footage from Langham Place, a bustling hub with dozens of cameras, showed no trace of the Chows that day. The brothers' story was unraveling, and Henry's nervous demeanor raised red flags. Police expanded their search, interviewing neighbors and checking travel records. A neighbor confirmed seeing Glory and Moon leave the apartment on March 1, their steps unhurried, their mood calm. But no one saw them return, and no travel agencies or border checkpoints had records of their departure. The case escalated to a missing persons investigation, with posters of Glory and Moon plastered across Tokwawan. The public's response was swift. Tips flooded the station, most speculative, some desperate. But one detail stood out: Henry's behavior in the days following the disappearance. He'd given interviews to local media, his face a mask of concern, but his words were oddly detached, his eyes avoiding the camera. Online forums buzzed with suspicion, netizens dissecting his body language, labeling him too calm or rehearsed. The investigation took a darker turn when police uncovered Henry's digital footprint. On an online gaming platform, he'd posted cryptic messages in the days before the disappearance, hinting at a big change in his life. More chillingly, anonymous tips began to surface, each pointing to Henry as more than a grieving son. A friend speaking on condition of anonymity claimed Henry had confessed to taking care of a problem at home. Another tip came from a cousin, Ko-un, who revealed a conversation that sent chills down investigators' spines. Henry had called her on March 2, his voice eerily calm, admitting he'd killed his parents. "I had to do it," he'd said, claiming psychopathy and resentment drove him. He described dismembering their bodies, cooking the remains to dispose of them as food waste, and boasted about evading detection. Ko-un, horrified, had dismissed it as a sick joke until the missing persons case hit the news. The most damning evidence came from Henry's own words. In a private chat with an online gaming group, he'd bragged about his perfect crime, detailing how he'd lured his parents to a second apartment, killed them, and disposed of their bodies. He claimed he'd planned to kill Ho Ying too, but spared him. After sensing his brother's affection, the group, assuming it was fiction, had laughed it off, but one member, disturbed by the specificity, forwarded the chat to the police. The messages were a roadmap to Henry's mind, a chilling blend of arrogance and detachment, as if murder were a game he'd won. On March 15th, police raided an apartment in Tai Kok Soi, a gritty district across the harbor. The address belonged to Angus Sai Chung K, a friend of Henry's, and was leased under Henry's name. Inside, they found a house of horrors. The air reeked of bleach, its sharp tang masking a deeper, sickly sweetness. Refrigerators lined the living room, their contents unthinkable. Plastic bags filled with human remains meticulously labeled. Foam containers held cooked flesh prepared for disposal as food waste. A notebook, written in Henry's precise handwriting, outlined a murder plan, complete with timelines and disposal methods. Forensic teams confirmed the remains were Glory and Moon's, their bodies dismembered with surgical precision, their identities reduced to fragments. Henry and Angus were arrested on the spot, their faces pale but unyielding. Henry's composure was unnerving. He answered questions with a faint smile as if recounting a mundane day. Angus, a hulking man with a vacant stare, said little, his low IQ evident in his halting speech. The police pieced together the crime from physical evidence and Henry's chilling confessions. On March 1, Henry had lured Glory and Moon to the Tai Kok Sui apartment under the pretense of a family meeting. Once inside, he attacked, using a hammer to subdue them before delivering fatal blows. Angus, present but not striking, helped restrain them, his strength ensuring their compliance. Over the next 2 days, Henry dismembered the bodies, using knives and a meat grinder, while Angus cleaned the apartment, his loyalty to Henry unwavering. They cooked the remains, blending them with rice to mask their nature, and disposed of them in public bins, believing the city's waste system would erase their crime. The motive was as complex as it was chilling. Henry's backstory revealed a life of privilege, tainted by resentment. Born in Hong Kong, he'd been sent to Australia for university, funded by his parents' sacrifices. But there, he faced discrimination, his short stature and accent making him a target. He returned to Hong Kong a failure, his degree unused, his jobs menial, his investments in stocks disastrous. He blamed Glory and Moon for his struggles, their high expectations a weight he couldn't bear. They'd pushed him to excel, their strict parenting a hallmark of Chinese culture, but Henry saw it as oppression. He fixated on his physical shortcomings, blaming his parents for his genetics, his bitterness festering into hatred. A psychological evaluation labeled him a psychopath, his lack of empathy stark. But Henry rejected the diagnosis, insisting his actions were justified. Angus's role was murkier. A childhood friend of Henry's, he'd grown up in poverty, his low IQ and troubled past making him vulnerable to manipulation. Henry had befriended him years earlier, offering financial support in exchange for loyalty. Police suspected Angus was more involved than he admitted. But his limited capacity and Henry's dominance muddled the truth. The notebook, written solely by Henry, detailed every step from luring the victims to disposing of evidence suggesting he was the mastermind. Yet Angus's presence during the murders and cleanup implicated him as more than a bystander. And the investigation uncovered a chilling detail. Henry's plan wasn't spontaneous. Months before the murders, he'd leased the Tai Kok Sui apartment, stocking it with tools, knives, a grinder, bleach, and refrigerators. He'd studied Hong Kong's waste disposal system, noting pickup times and bin locations. His online post, once dismissed as bravado, revealed a calculated mind, testing reactions to his hypothetical crime. He'd even researched psychopathy, adopting the label to explain his detachment as if it absolved him of guilt. The police marveled at his audacity, his belief that he could outsmart an entire city. Ho Ying, devastated by the truth, became a key witness. He'd suspected Henry's involvement, but clung to denial, unable to fathom his brother's capacity for evil. At the station, he recounted Henry's odd behavior, his insistence on the China trip story, his refusal to meet Ho Ying's eyes. Ho Ying's grief was palpable, his love for his parents clashing with the horror of his brother's actions. He provided a critical clue, a text from Henry on March 2, urging him to stay strong and not ask questions, a veiled attempt to keep him complicit. The trial, held in 2015 at Hong Kong's High Court, was a media spectacle. Reporters packed the courtroom, their cameras capturing Henry's impassive face, Angus's hunched figure. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence: the notebook, the remains, the online confessions, and forensic matches linking the murder weapons to the victims. Henry's defense claimed diminished responsibility, citing his psychopathy and parental pressure, but the argument fell flat. His planning was too deliberate, his remorse non-existent. Angus's lawyer argued coercion, portraying him as a pawn, but his role in the cleanup undermined the plea. Henry's testimony was chilling. He described the murders with clinical detachment, as if recounting a recipe. "I hit them until they stopped moving," he said, his voice flat. When asked why, he shrugged. "They made me feel small." The courtroom gasped at his callousness. Glory and Moon's memory defiled by his words. Angus, barely coherent, mumbled apologies, his eyes fixed on the floor. The contrast was stark. Henry's arrogance, Angus's submission, a dynamic that defined their crime. On June 3rd, 2015, the verdicts were delivered. Henry was convicted of 2 counts of murder, sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. His name synonymous with evil in Hong Kong's annals. Angus was acquitted of murder, but convicted of obstructing a lawful burial, receiving 1 year, already served during pretrial detention. The judge's words were scathing, labeling Henry a dangerous deceiver whose actions betrayed the sanctity of family. Ho Ying, present for the verdict, wept silently, his world shattered by a brother he no longer knew. The case left an indelible mark on Hong Kong. Media dubbed it the Duquan dismemberment, a grim moniker that haunted the city. A 2022 film, The Sparring Partner, reignited debate, with some arguing Angus's role was understated. Others seeing Henry as the sole architect. Public discourse turned to the pressures of Chinese parenting, the weight of filial duty, and the psychological toll of perceived failure. Glory and Moon, once anonymous retirees, became symbols of sacrifice, their deaths a cautionary tale of love twisted into resentment. The Tai Koksui apartment was abandoned, its doors sealed, its windows dark. Locals whispered of strange noises, of shadows moving behind the curtains, as if Glory and Moon's spirits lingered, seeking justice. Henry, now in Stanley prison, remains unrepentant, his letters to the press claiming he's misunderstood. Angus, released in 2015, vanished into obscurity, his life forever marked by his friend's darkness. As the rain falls, carrying the child's tragedy into the night, we close this chapter of Shadows. 5 stories, 5 wounds in the fabric of humanity, each a reminder that the deepest cuts come from those we trust most. Sleep well, listeners, if you can. The shadows are always watching. As the rain falls, its steady rhythm a somber lullaby, we draw the curtain on these 5 haunting tales from the shadows. From Taipei's vibrant streets, where Gao's trust was shattered by a predator's deceit, to Inner Mongolia's gritty heart, where Xiao Shuang fell victim to a lover's greed, each story has peeled back the veneer of human connection. In France, Gane, Marcel's locked basement whispered accusations, leaving Omar's fate a riddle wrapped in blood. South Korea's neon nights bore witness to Miss Kang's sacrifice, betrayed by the son she lived for. And in Hong Kong, Glory and Moon Chow's love was met with Henry's unthinkable cruelty, a son's resentment carved into their flesh. These stories, though worlds apart, are bound by a chilling truth. The deepest wounds come from those we hold closest. Trust, love, and duty, virtues we cherish, can twist into weapons wielded by hands we never suspect. The rain carries their echoes, a reminder that evil doesn't always lurk in dark alleys. Sometimes it sits at our table, shares our blood, and wears our name. Thank you, listeners, for walking these shadow paths with us. If these tales have stirred your thoughts or chilled your dreams, share them with those brave enough to listen. Subscribe to Shadows of the Past for more journeys into the abyss where truth is stranger and darker than fiction. As the rain fades, we leave you with a question. Who do you trust when the shadows call? Sleep well if you can. The night is long and the past is never truly gone.